Mom, Dad hasn't been home in 3 days. Food truck families battle against betrayal. Before I tell you this story, let me ask you something. Have you ever had everything fall apart at 4 in the morning? Have you ever stood in a food truck making your grandmother's secret recipe while your whole world crumbles through a text message? If you have, then you know Maria's pain. If you haven't, well, stick around. Because this story of betrayal, viral videos, and 3 generations of women fighting for their dreams might just change how you see that food truck on the corner. Hit that like button if you've ever been betrayed, and subscribe to hear more stories of people who turned their darkest moments into their greatest triumphs. The alarm never went off at 3:45 a.m. Maria Gonzalez didn't need it anymore. After 5 years of running Corazon de Mexico, her body had rewired itself to the rhythm of the food truck life. The meat needed to marinate. The salsas needed to breathe. The tortillas needed that first kiss of heat before the Los Angeles sun even thought about rising. But this morning was different. This morning at exactly 4:07 a.m., while Maria ground chiles for her grandmother's mole negro, her phone lit up with a video from Sofia. Her 15-year-old daughter's face filled the screen, mascara running in black rivers down her cheeks. Mom, Dad hasn't been home in 3 days. I know you're probably preparing for the morning rush, but I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending everything's fine. Please come home. Maria's hands stilled on the mortar and pestle. The volcanic stone held the half-crushed chiles, their oils releasing a perfume that usually comforted her. Not today. She wiped her hands on her apron, the one David had bought her 10 years ago when she'd graduated from culinary school, the one that said Chef Maria in elegant script. Back when he still believed in her dreams. Back when he didn't see her food truck as something beneath them. The Fairfax district was still sleeping as Maria stepped out of the truck. The streetlights painted everything in amber, making the world look like it was suspended in honey. She could hear the distant hum of delivery trucks heading to restaurants. Real restaurants, as David would say. Places with white tablecloths and wine lists and James Beard nominations. She pulled up Find My Phone, her fingers trembling slightly. David's location showed him at the Chateau Marmont. Of course. Where else would a chef with pretensions spend 3 nights? But it was the second location that made her stomach drop. Victoria Chen, the food critic whose single review could make or break a restaurant in this city. Her phone was at the same location. Maria sat down on the curb outside her food truck. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there watching the sky lighten from black to purple to pink, while inside her truck, the mole continued to release its ancient perfume into the morning air. The recipe had been passed down through 4 generations of Gonzalez women. Her grandmother had taught her mother who had taught her, and she was supposed to teach Sofia. But Sofia didn't want to learn. Sofia wanted to be a filmmaker, a content creator, something with followers and likes and viral moments. She thought her mother's life was small. And maybe Maria thought as she sat on that cold curb, maybe it was. Carlos arrived at 5:30, as he always did. Carlos Martinez, 45 years old, built like a boxer who'd let himself enjoy too many tacos. He'd been with Maria since day 1 when Corazon de Mexico was just a dream and a loan she could barely qualify for. Jeffa, he said, using his pet name for her boss. You okay? Maria stood up, dusting off her jeans. David's having an affair. Carlos's face went through a series of expressions, surprise, anger, then something that looked almost like relief. With who? Victoria Chen. The critic, the one who called your food pedestrian comfort food that lacks the sophistication of true Mexican cuisine. Maria almost laughed. Carlos had memorized every negative review they'd ever received. He took them personally, sometimes more personally than she did. I need to keep working, Maria said. The breakfast crowd can wait. Carlos took the keys from her hand. Go home. Be with Sofia. But Maria couldn't go home. Not yet. Instead, she drove to Santa Monica, to the spot where she and David had gotten married 12 years ago. The beach was empty except for a few early morning joggers and a homeless man wrapped in a sleeping bag that looked like a cocoon. She sat in her beat-up Honda Civic, the one they'd never upgraded because every penny went back into the business, either hers or David's. She didn't cry. She couldn't cry. There was something broken in her tear ducts had been since her father died when she was 22. She just sat there watching the waves roll in and out, thinking about how water always knew where to go. It didn't question. It didn't doubt. It just flowed. Her phone buzzed. A notification from TikTok. She didn't have TikTok, but apparently Sophia had created an account for the food truck. The video was shaky, obviously filmed in secret. It showed Maria from that morning grinding chilies in the darkness of the food truck, her face lit only by the under-cabinet LEDs. Sophia had added text overlay. My mom doesn't know I'm filming this. She gets up at 3:45 every morning to make food that reminds people of home. She doesn't know I'm proud of her. 100 views already. 100 people had watched her daughter's secret confession of love. Maria finally let herself feel something. Not sadness about David, not anger about Victoria, but something else. Something that felt like the first green shoot pushing through concrete. She drove back to the food truck. Carlos had opened without her, and there was already a line of regulars. Mrs. Park from the Korean grocery next door, who ordered the same breakfast burrito every morning, but always asked for less spicy, even though Maria never made it spicy for her. Tommy, the security guard from the museum, who practiced his Spanish with Carlos and tipped in crumpled $5 bills. Jennifer, the yoga instructor, who always asked if the tortillas were gluten-free, knowing they weren't ordering them anyway. These people weren't just customers. They were her community, her family in a way that David had never understood. Maria, Mrs. Park waved her over. I saw Sophia's video on the TikTok. My granddaughter sent it to me. Your famous 500 views now. 500 people had seen her in her most private moment doing what she'd done every morning for 5 years. Maria went back into the truck, tying her apron tighter. She started assembling orders, her hands moving with practiced precision. Carnitas for Mrs. Park, extra cilantro. Chorizo for Tommy, extra onions. Veggie for Jennifer, extra avocado. It was 11 a.m. when Carlos showed her his phone. His face was pale, his usual joke-ready expression completely gone. Jeffa, you need to see this. It was an email from David's account, forwarded from someone called Truthteller 1987. The subject line read, Plans for CDM. Maria read it once, then twice, then a third time because her brain couldn't quite process what she was seeing. David and Victoria weren't just having an affair. They were planning to destroy her business. The email detailed everything. Fake health department complaints, coordinated negative Yelp reviews, even plans to poach Carlos by offering him double his salary at David's new restaurant concept, a refined Mexican dining experience that elevates street food to its proper artistic level. The worst part was a line from Victoria. Once her little taco stand fails, she'll have no choice but to accept your divorce terms. Full custody of Sophia, minimal support payments. After all, what judge would award custody to a failed food truck operator over a successful chef? Maria's hands were steady as she handed the phone back to Carlos. She looked out the window of the truck at the line of customers at Sophia's TikTok playing on someone's phone at the life she'd built one taco at a time. What do you want to do? Carlos asked. Maria turned back to her prep station. She pulled out another batch of chilies for the mole. Her grandmother had taught her that the best mole took time. You couldn't rush it. You had to let each ingredient have its moment, let them all come together in their own time. We're going to make the best food we've ever made, she said. And we're going to document everything. That's it. That's your plan. Maria smiled, and it was the kind of smile that Carlos had only seen once before when a customer had thrown a burrito at her and demanded a refund. That customer had ended up apologizing and becoming a regular. No, Carlos, that's not my plan. That's just the beginning. But first, I need to teach my daughter how to make mole. That evening, Maria didn't go to the empty house she shared with David's absence. Instead, she brought Sophia to the food truck after closing. Her daughter arrived with her phone, her ring light, and a wary expression that broke Maria's heart. Are you and Dad getting divorced? Sophia asked without preamble. Yes, mija, we are. Sophia nodded, trying to look tough, trying to look like she didn't care. But Maria saw the way her daughter's hands shook as she set up her ring light. Is it my fault because of the video? Maria pulled her daughter into a hug, feeling Sophia resist for a moment before melting into her arms. No, baby. None of this is your fault. Your father made his choices long before you posted that video. They stood there in the food truck holding each other while the evening traffic of Los Angeles rushed by outside. Finally, Sophia pulled back. So are you going to teach me the mole or what? Maria laughed, actually laughed for the first time in days. You want to learn? Well, somebody needs to document it properly. Your hands are always in the frame, but you never show the measurements. It's driving people crazy in the comments. 2,000 views now. 2,000 people invested in their story without even knowing there was a story to tell. Maria pulled out the ingredients, laying them on the steel prep counter like an artist arranging paints. 28 ingredients for mole negro, each one with its purpose, its moment to shine. This recipe, Maria began, came from your great-great-grandmother. She made it in Oaxaca in a kitchen with a dirt floor and a wood-burning stove. Sophia filmed as Maria toasted chilies on a comal, the metal disc that had belonged to her mother. The smell filled the truck. Mulatto chiles, negro chiles, each one adding its note to the symphony. "Why didn't you ever teach me before?" Sophia asked, adjusting her camera angle. Maria considered the question. "I think I was afraid you'd see it as a burden, the way I did when I was your age. I wanted to be a chef in a real restaurant. I wanted to wear the white coat and have my name on the menu. I didn't want to be another Mexican woman making her grandmother's recipes." "But you are," Sophia said, and it didn't sound like an insult. "And that's kind of badass." They worked in companionable silence for a while, Sophia filming as Maria ground spices in the molcajete. The volcanic stone mortar and pestle had been in the family for 60 years. It had absorbed the oils and essences of thousands of meals, becoming seasoned with memory. "Mom," Sophia said suddenly, "I know about Dad and Victoria." Maria's hands stilled. "How, Ted?" "I have his email on my iPad, from when I was younger, and he'd let me play games on his account." Sophia's voice was steady, but Maria could hear the hurt underneath. "I've known for weeks. Oh, mija. I didn't tell you because I thought maybe if I ignored it, it would go away, like when you ignore a bully at school." Sophia adjusted her camera again, using the movement to avoid eye contact. "But it didn't go away. It got worse." Maria wanted to pull her daughter close again, but Sophia was filming, and somehow the camera had become a shield they both needed right now. "Are you going to fight back?" Sophia asked. Maria added chocolate to the mole, watching it melt into the dark sauce. "What would you do?" "I'd destroy them," Sophia said without hesitation. "I'd expose them on every platform. I'd make sure everyone knew what they did." "And then what?" Sophia frowned. "What do you mean?" "After you destroy them, then what? You still have to wake up the next morning. You still have to live your life. You still have to be who you are." Maria stirred the mole, the sauce thick and dark as night, complex as life itself. "Your grandmother taught me something. She said revenge is like adding too much salt to a dish. It might make you feel satisfied for a moment, but it ruins everything else." "So you're just going to let them win?" "No, mija. I'm going to let them lose. There's a difference." That night they finished the mole at midnight. Sophia had filmed everything, creating what she called content, but what Maria recognized as something more, a document of inheritance of knowledge passing from one generation to the next. "I'm going to post this," Sophia said, showing her mother the edited video. "Is that okay?" Maria watched her daughter's work. Sophia had managed to capture something essential, the steam rising from the sauce, the way Maria's hands moved with inherited precision, the moment when all the ingredients finally came together into something greater than their individual parts. "Post it," Maria said. By the time they got home to the house that now felt like a shell of a life that was ending, the video had 10,000 views. Comments poured in from around the world. People sharing their own family recipes, their own stories of preservation and tradition. David's car was in the driveway. The lights were on in his study, the room where he planned his menus, where he'd once helped Maria write the business plan for the food truck back when he still believed in her dreams. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Sophia asked. Maria looked at her daughter, this fierce, brilliant girl who was becoming a woman before her eyes. "No, mija. This is something I need to do alone." But as Maria walked toward the house, she realized she wasn't alone. She carried with her the strength of her grandmother's recipes, the loyalty of Carlos, the unexpected support of thousands of strangers on the internet, and most importantly, the love of her daughter, who had finally begun to see her not just as a mother, but as a woman with her own story of survival and triumph. The front door opened before she could reach it. David stood there, still in his chef's whites from the restaurant, looking tired and somehow smaller than she remembered. "Maria," he said, "we need to talk." "Yes," she said, walking past him into the house that would soon no longer be hers. "We do." But first she thought, checking her phone one more time, she had a business to run. The morning would come at 3:45 as it always did. The meat would need to marinate. The salsas would need to breathe. And now 25,000 people would be watching to see what happened next. In the food truck business, as in life, the show must go on. The conversation with David was shorter than Maria expected. He sat at their kitchen table, the one they'd bought at an estate sale when they were first married, when every purchase was an adventure and every meal together was a celebration. Now it was just furniture in a house that felt like a museum of their former life. "I know you know," he said without preamble. Maria poured herself a glass of water. Not wine, though there was a bottle of good Malbec on the counter, probably from David's restaurant. She needed to be clear for this. "About Victoria, or about your plans to destroy my business?" David's face went through several expressions, surprise, guilt, then settling on something that looked like indignation. "It's not personal, Maria. It's business. Using our daughter for custody leverage is business. You read the emails." "Carlos showed them to me. Someone forwarded them." Maria sat down across from him, studying this man she'd loved for 12 years. When had he become a stranger? Or had he always been one, and she'd just been too in love to notice who forwarded them? David's voice was sharp now, the chef who'd found someone using the wrong knife for prep work. "Does it matter?" David stood up, pacing to the window that overlooked their small backyard. The lemon tree they'd planted on Sophia's 5th birthday was heavy with fruit neither of them had bothered to pick. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under," he said. "The restaurant is hemorrhaging money. The investors are threatening to pull out. Victoria said if we could create a new concept, something that bridges authentic Mexican with fine dining. Using my grandmother's recipes." David turned to face her. "They're just recipes, Maria. Food doesn't belong to anyone." And there it was, the fundamental difference between them laid bare in a single sentence. To David, food was art, something to be elevated and refined and claimed. To Maria, food was memory, community, inheritance. It was her grandmother's hands teaching her to test the heat of oil with a drop of water. It was her mother singing while she cooked Sunday dinner. It was Sophia learning to make mole at midnight in a food truck. "I want a divorce," Maria said quietly. "Good. My lawyer will send papers tomorrow. I'm willing to be generous if you're reasonable about custody." Maria stood up. "I'm taking Sophia with me tonight. We'll stay with Carlos until I figure something out." "You can't just take her." "David." Maria's voice was calm, calmer than she felt. "Your daughter has been crying herself to sleep for weeks because her father would rather spend his nights with his mistress than come home. You haven't asked once how she's doing. You haven't even looked at what she's been creating online, the beautiful work she's doing to support my little taco stand. So yes, I can take her, and I will." David's face flushed. "You think you've won something here? You think your little viral videos mean anything? I have the best lawyers in the city. I have connections. I have 10. You have Victoria Chen," Maria interrupted. "A food critic who's currently being blackmailed by the chef she's sleeping with. How do you think that's going to play out, David?" She didn't wait for his answer. She went upstairs, packed 2 suitcases, one for her, one for Sophia. The important things fit in less space than she'd imagined. Clothes, toiletries, the photo album from her mother, her grandmother's molkajete wrapped in kitchen towels. Sophia was waiting in her room, already packed her ring light and camera equipment, taking up more space than her clothes. "Ready?" Maria asked. "Mom, look at this." Sophia showed her phone screen. The mole video had hit 50,000 views. But more importantly, someone had started a hashtag #Save Corazon de Mexico. "How do they know about—" "I might have posted about Dad and Victoria in the comments," Sophia said, not looking remotely sorry. "People figured out the rest." Maria wanted to be angry, wanted to tell her daughter that family business should stay private. But then she thought about David's email about his plans to use their private life as a weapon. Maybe it was time to stop fighting in the shadows. Carlos's apartment was in Koreatown, a 2-bedroom space above a Korean barbecue restaurant that filled the air with the constant smell of grilled meat and kimchi. He'd given them his bedroom, insisting on taking the couch despite Maria's protests. "My back needs it anyway." He'd lied badly. That night, Maria couldn't sleep. She sat on Carlos's tiny balcony, watching the city lights twinkle like ground stars, reading through the comments on Sophia's videos. People from around the world were sharing their own stories of family businesses destroyed by corporate interests, of traditions lost to modernization, of women fighting to preserve their culinary heritage. At 3:00 a.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Maria Gonzalez?" The voice was female, older, carefully modulated. "Yes. Who is this?" My name is Rosa Gonzalez. I think it's time we talked. Maria's hand gripped the phone so tightly, her knuckles went white. She hadn't heard her mother's voice in 10 years. Not since the fight that had ended with words neither of them could take back, with Maria swearing she'd never need anything from the woman who'd called her dreams pedestrian, long before Victoria Chen ever did. I have nothing to say to you, Maria whispered, not wanting to wake Sophia. Then listen, Rosa said. I've been following your story, Sophia's videos. I've been following it all. How did you get this number? I've had your number for 10 years, mija. I've had your address, your email, everything. I've known about every milestone, every struggle, every small triumph. Did you think those anonymous online orders for 50 breakfast burritos that always tipped 200% were really from construction crews? Maria's mind raced back through 5 years of food truck operations. The mysterious large orders that always came when business was slow, always paid in advance, always with tips that kept them afloat during the lean months. That was you every Wednesday for 5 years. Rosa's voice cracked slightly. It was the only way I could support you without admitting I was wrong. Maria stood up, pacing the small balcony. Below, a drunk couple was arguing about an Uber ride, their voices carrying in the still night air. Why now? Maria asked. Why call now? Because that pendejo you married is about to destroy everything you've built, and I'm not going to let that happen. Not to my daughter. Not to my granddaughter. Not to my family's recipes that you've kept alive when I was too proud to pass them on properly. You called them peasant food. You said I was wasting my education. I was wrong. The words came out rushed, like Rosa had been holding them in so long they'd fermented. I was wrong, and I was scared. Scared you'd end up like me, tied to a stove, known only for what you could cook, not for who you were. But you found a way to be both. You found a way I never could. Maria sat back down, suddenly exhausted. Mama, I can't do this right now. David is about to file health department complaints at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. He has 3 scheduled inspections that will find violations because he's paid off one of the inspectors. Your truck will be shut down by noon. How do you? Because Victoria Chen is my patient. Maria's world tilted. Her mother was a psychiatrist, had been for 30 years. The kind of psychiatrist who treated the wealthy and powerful in Beverly Hills, who knew everyone's secrets and kept them all. She told you, isn't that? She didn't tell me. She talks in her sleep during hypnotherapy, mentions names, dates, plans. It's remarkable what the guilty conscience reveals when the conscious mind isn't standing guard. This is insane. This is Los Angeles, mija. Everything is insane here. The question is, do you want my help or not? Maria looked through the sliding door at Sophia, asleep on the bed, her phone still clutched in her hand, even in dreams, ready to capture the next moment of their story. What kind of help? The kind that comes with 40 years of connections in this city. The kind that knows which health inspectors can't be bought, and which food critics have their own secrets. The kind that's been waiting 10 years for a chance to make things right. I don't want charity. Not even from you. Especially not from you. It's not charity. It's war. And in war, mija, you use every weapon you have. Rosa paused. Your grandmother would have understood that. She didn't survive the revolution by being nice. Maria thought about the moles simmering in the food truck, about the generations of women who'd stirred that same sauce, each one adding their own struggle to its complexity. 9 a.m., she asked. Yes, Inspector Morrison. Badge number 4827. He'll have a violation notice already filled out. And if I'm not there, then he'll post it anyway and shut you down for noncompliance. Maria made a decision. I'll be there, with cameras. That's my girl. Rosa's voice carried something Maria hadn't heard in years' pride. And Maria, after this is over, after you've saved your business, we need to talk. Really talk. Your daughter deserves to know her grandmother. Both of her grandmothers. The one who makes mole and the one who makes mistakes. The line went dead. Maria sat on the balcony until the sky started to lighten, watching the city wake up, thinking about wars and weapons and women who survived by whatever means necessary. At 3:45 a.m., her internal alarm went off. Time to prepare for battle. But first the meat needed to marinate. The salsas needed to breathe. The tortillas needed that first kiss of heat. Some things, no matter what else was falling apart, remained sacred. The morning of the inspection, Maria arrived at the food truck at 3:30 a.m. Carlos was already there along with someone she didn't expect, Miguel Rivera, the food blogger who'd been commenting on Sofia's videos. Sofia asked me to come, Miguel explained, holding up a professional camera. She said you might need backup documentation. Miguel was younger than Maria had expected, maybe 26, with the kind of carefully groomed casualness that took effort to maintain. Designer jeans, vintage band t-shirt, shoes that cost more than her monthly truck payment. But his eyes were earnest, and he held the camera like someone who knew what they were doing. "You know what's happening?" Maria asked. "Everyone knows," Miguel said, showing her his phone. The #Save Corazón de Mexico was trending in Los Angeles. "Your daughter's a genius." She turned this into a David versus Goliath story. Literally David versus you. Carlos snorted. That pendejo couldn't beat Maria on his best day. They prepared for the morning rush in tense silence, Miguel filming everything with unobtrusive precision. At 7 a.m., Sofia arrived with 3 of her friends, all armed with phones and ring lights. "We're going live on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube simultaneously," Sofia announced. "Mama just cook. We'll handle the rest." By 8:30, there was a line around the block. Not just the regular customers, but new faces. Young people with phones out recording everything. Middle-aged women speaking Spanish talking about supporting La Hermana, a group of food truck owners from around the city wearing their aprons like uniforms of solidarity. At 8:47, Maria's phone buzzed. "Rosa, he's early, 2 minutes out." Maria looked at her daughter, at Carlos, at this small army that had assembled around her food truck. "He's coming." The health inspector's van pulled up at 8:49. Inspector Morrison was exactly what Maria had expected, middle-aged, soft around the middle with the kind of mustache that tried too hard to establish authority. What she hadn't expected was for him to look nervous. He saw the cameras, the crowd, the phones pointed at him like weapons. His hand shook slightly as he pulled out his clipboard. "Ms. Gonzalez, I'm here for a routine inspection." "Of course," Maria said pleasantly. "Would you like to try our breakfast special while you inspect on the house?" Morrison's eyes darted around. "That won't be necessary." But Mrs. Park was already pushing forward with a plate. "Inspector, you must try Maria's chorizo. Best in the city. I eat here every day for 5 years. Never sick once." More customers pressed forward, all eager to testify about the food, the cleanliness, the love that went into every meal. Morrison looked like he wanted to run. He went through the motions of inspection, Sofia's camera following his every move. Maria had spent 3 hours deep cleaning the already spotless truck. Every surface gleamed. Every temperature log was perfect. Every permit was displayed. Morrison stood in the truck, clipboard in hand, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning. He looked at something tucked behind his inspection sheet. Maria could see it was a pre-written violation notice, just as Rosa had warned. "Is there a problem, Inspector?" Maria asked loudly, making sure the cameras caught every word. Morrison's phone rang. He answered it, his face going pale. "Yes, sir. I understand, sir. No, sir." He hung up, tore up the pre-written violation, and pulled out a fresh form. His hands shook as he wrote. "Perfect score," he announced louder than necessary. "Best food truck inspection I've done all year." The crowd erupted in cheers. Morrison practically ran back to his van, but not before Sofia got a clear shot of the torn violation notice he'd dropped in his haste. "We got him," Sofia whispered to her mother. "We got it all on video." But Maria wasn't celebrating yet. This was just the first wave. David had more moves to make, and she needed to be ready. Miguel approached her as the crowd dispersed. "That was impressive," he said. "But you know this isn't over, right?" "I know." "I might be able to help." He paused, seeming to weigh his words. "My father owns several restaurant spaces around the city. He's been watching your story unfold. He's interested." Maria's defenses went up immediately. "I'm not selling. He doesn't want to buy your truck. He wants to offer you a brick-and-mortar location. Same concept, bigger kitchen. You could keep the truck running and have a permanent location, too." "Why would he do that?" Miguel smiled, but it was sad somehow. "Because he loves an underdog story. And because he hates David Chen. Your husband gave my father food poisoning at an investor's dinner last year. Cost him a major deal." Before Maria could respond, her phone rang. Victoria Chen's name appeared on the screen. "I need to take this," Maria said. Victoria's voice was different than Maria had expected. Not the polished critic's tone from her reviews, but something rawer, more desperate. "We need to meet," Victoria said without preamble. "I don't think that's a good idea. David's planning something worse. Much worse. I can't let him do it. Not anymore. Why should I trust you? There was a long pause. Because I'm pregnant. And it's not David's. The words hung in the air like smoke from burnt oil. Maria found herself sitting down on the truck's back bumper, trying to process this information. Meet me at Griffith Observatory noon, Victoria continued. Come alone, please. The line went dead. Maria looked up to find Sofia, Carlos, and Miguel all staring at her. What did she want? Sofia asked. To talk. It's a trap, Carlos said immediately. Don't go. I agree, Miguel added. This feels like a setup. But Sofia was studying her mother's face. You're going anyway, aren't you? Maria nodded. But not alone. At noon, Maria stood at the Griffith Observatory looking out over Los Angeles, spread below like a circuit board of dreams and broken promises. The city sprawled endlessly, each neighborhood a different flavor, a different story. Victoria Chen looked smaller in person than in her professional photos. She was elegant, yes, but there was something fragile about her now. She wore oversized sunglasses and a silk scarf like a movie star from the 1950s, trying to avoid paparazzi. Thank you for coming, Victoria said. My daughter is recording this conversation, Maria said, gesturing to where Sofia stood 20 feet away, camera trained on them. For my protection, Victoria nodded. That's fair, more than fair considering. They stood in silence for a moment, two women who should have been enemies looking out at the city that had shaped them both. I've been David's mistress for 2 years, Victoria said suddenly. Not continuously, on and off, whenever he needed a good review or I needed to feel powerful. It was transactional mostly, until it wasn't. I don't need the details. No, but you need to understand. David doesn't love me. He doesn't love anyone. He loves the idea of people, what they can do for him, how they can elevate his status. You were his muse when he was young and idealistic. I was his ladder when he got ambitious, and now we're both just obstacles. Victoria pulled out her phone, showing Maria a series of emails. He's planning to plant drugs in your truck. Enough to get you arrested, get the truck impounded, get you a felony charge that would prevent you from ever getting a food service license again. Maria's blood went cold. Tonight. He has a key, doesn't he? He's going to plant them and then call in an anonymous tip tomorrow morning. Why are you telling me this? Victoria removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed tired. Because I'm 8 weeks pregnant. And when I told David, he said he'd destroy me if I didn't get rid of it. He said he'd release photos, videos, everything that would end my career. He said I was nothing but a washed-up critic who couldn't even get a reservation at the restaurants I used to review. She laughed bitterly. He was probably right about that last part. But the rest, I'm 35 years old, Maria. This might be my only chance at having a child. And I'm not letting David Chen take that from me, too. Maria studied the other woman, this polished professional who'd helped plan the destruction of her business, who'd slept with her husband, who'd dismissed her food as pedestrian. And yet in this moment, she saw something else. Another woman trying to survive in a city that consumed the weak. What do you want from me? Maria asked. Nothing. I guess this is my apology. And my revenge. Victoria pulled out a small recording device. Every conversation with David for the last 6 months. Every plan, every threat, every cruel thing he said about you, about Sofia, about the life you built. It's all here. She held out the device, but Maria didn't take it. Not yet. The baby, Maria said. Whose is it? Victoria's smile was sad. Someone who doesn't matter. Someone who was kind to me for one night when David was being cruel. Someone whose name David will never know. Maria took the recording device. It was heavier than it looked, weighted with the kind of evidence that could destroy a man's reputation forever. What will you do? Maria asked. Leave Los Angeles. Go somewhere where my reviews don't matter and my mistakes don't follow me. Maybe Seattle. I hear they need food critics there. Victoria put her sunglasses back on. What will you do? Maria thought about the moles simmering in her truck, about her grandmother's advice about revenge being too much salt. But sometimes she thought a dish needed salt to bring out its true flavors. I'm going to cook, Maria said. I'm going to raise my daughter. I'm going to build something that lasts longer than David's ambition. Victoria nodded, starting to walk away, then turned back. For what it's worth, I was wrong about your food. It's not pedestrian. It's honest. And in this city, that's rarer than a Michelin star. After Victoria left, Sophia ran up to her mother. "Did you get it all?" "Every word," Sophia said. "But Mom, are we really going to let her just walk away after everything?" Maria put her arm around her daughter as they walked back to the car. "She's not walking away, mija. She's walking forward. There's a difference." That evening, they didn't go back to Carlos's apartment. Instead, Maria drove to the food truck where Carlos was waiting with someone unexpected, Rosa Gonzalez, her mother standing beside the truck like she belonged there. Rosa looked older, of course. 10 years of silence had added lines to her face, silver to her hair, but her posture was still perfect, her presence still commanding. Mama Maria said the word feeling foreign in her mouth. "We need to cook," Rosa said simply. "All of us, together. If David's coming tonight, he should find us here doing what we do best." It was strange, this sudden alliance. Sophia looked between her mother and grandmother, these two women who'd been strangers to each other for her entire conscious memory. "Abuela," Sophia said tentatively. Rosa's composure cracked. "Ay, mi cielo, you've grown so beautiful. You look just like your bisabuela." Miguel appeared with his camera. "I hope you don't mind, but I called some friends. If David's really going to try something tonight, we should have witnesses." Within an hour, the parking lot around the food truck had transformed into an impromptu party. Other food truck owners brought their vehicles, creating a fortress of mobile kitchens. Musicians appeared with guitars and accordions. Someone strung lights between the trucks, turning the space into an outdoor restaurant. Maria, Rosa, and Sophia worked side by side in the truck, 3 generations of Gonzalez women making food that carried their history in every bite. Rosa taught Sophia the old songs that went with the cooking, the ones that helped you remember when to turn the meat, when to add the spice. "Your bisabuela sang these in Oaxaca." Rosa explained, her hands guiding Sophia's as they shaped masa for tortillas. She said the songs were as important as the recipes. They kept the rhythm of the cooking. Maria watched her mother teach her daughter, feeling something heal that she hadn't even known was broken. This was what David had never understood. Food wasn't just about taste or presentation. It was about transmission, about passing something essential from one generation to the next. At 10 p.m., Carlos spotted David's BMW pulling into the far end of the parking lot. But David wasn't alone. He had 2 other men with him, rough-looking types who definitely weren't sous chefs. "Nobody panic," Miguel said quietly, but his camera was already rolling. "Let him come." David saw the crowd, the cameras, the celebration in full swing. He sat in his car for a full 5 minutes, probably trying to figure out his next move. Finally, he drove away, his plan foiled by the simple act of community. The party continued until dawn. Someone had called a news crew, and by morning, the story of Corazón de Mexico had gone from local social media phenomenon to actual news. "Food truck family fights back," the headline read, with a photo of 3 generations of Gonzalez women cooking together. But it was what happened after the news crew left that really mattered. Rosa pulled Maria aside, away from the cameras and the crowd. "I put money in your account," she said quietly. $50,000. "Mama, no. It's not charity. It's not even a gift. It's back payment for all the meals I should have eaten here, all the moments I missed because I was too proud to admit I was wrong." Rosa's voice broke. "I missed 10 years of your life, Maria. 10 years of Sophia's childhood. I can't buy that back, but I can help you fight forward." "I don't know if I can forgive you," Maria said honestly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to earn it." They stood there in the morning light, 2 stubborn women who'd inherited their strength and their flaws from the same source. "The money has conditions," Rosa continued. "You use it to hire a lawyer, a good one. You use it to upgrade the truck to get a second one if you need it. You use it to destroy David properly, legally, completely. And you let me teach Sophia the rest of the recipes. The ones I never taught you because I thought they were beneath us. The ones my mother made me swear to pass on, the ones I nearly let die with my pride." Maria thought about Victoria's recording device in her pocket, about the evidence that could destroy David without any of Rosa's money. But this wasn't about David anymore. This was about building something stronger than revenge. "Sunday dinners," Maria said. "You come to Sunday dinners. We cook together. All of us." Rosa nodded, tears finally breaking through her composed facade. Sunday dinners. Miguel approached them, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Mrs. Gonzalez Maria, I need to tell you something." "About your father." About my father, yes, but also about me. He took a breath. I'm not just a food blogger. I'm an investor. My father sent me to evaluate your business, but not for the reasons I said. He wants to franchise Corazon de Mexico. Take it national. He thinks your story, your food, your family, it could be the next big thing. Maria felt the familiar weight of someone else's ambition pressing down on her dreams. And what do you think, Miguel? I think you should say no, Miguel said, surprising everyone. I think what makes this special can't be franchised, but I also think you need help. Real help. Not corporate takeover help, but the kind that lets you grow on your own terms. Why should I trust you? You've been lying this whole time. Because I'm about to lose my trust fund for telling you this, Miguel said with a rueful smile. My father doesn't know I'm here. When he finds out I warned you, I'm cut off. But watching you all tonight, seeing what you've built, this is real. This matters. And I'd rather be part of something real than rich off something fake. Sophia, who'd been filming the whole conversation, lowered her camera. Mom, I think he means it. Of course he means it, Rosa interjected. Look at his eyes. That's a man in love. Mama, Maria protested, but Miguel was already blushing. Not with you, Rosa clarified, looking at Miguel with the penetrating gaze of a psychiatrist. With the idea of authenticity. With the possibility of belonging to something genuine. Am I wrong, young man? Miguel shook his head. No, ma'am, you're not wrong. Carlos, who'd been listening from the truck window, called out, Jeffa, we've got a line forming. The morning rush is starting. Maria looked around at this strange new configuration of her life, her estranged mother, her viral video director, daughter, a love-struck rich kid who'd chosen integrity over inheritance, her loyal friend who'd never wavered, and beyond them a community that had shown up when she needed them most. Everyone who's staying, grab an apron, she announced. We've got work to do. As they prepared for the morning rush, Sophia's phone buzzed with a notification. Her latest video, the one of the confrontation with the health inspector, had hit 5 million views. But more importantly, someone had started a GoFundMe, Save Corazon de Mexico. It had already raised $30,000 in 12 hours. Mom, Sophia said, showing her the phone. People want to help. Maria looked at the numbers at the comments from strangers around the world who'd been moved by their story. She thought about David probably at home planning his next attack. She thought about Victoria driving to Seattle with a secret growing inside her. She thought about her grandmother whose recipes had survived revolution and immigration and nearly died in the silence between Rosa and herself. Then we let them help, Maria said. But first, I know, Sophia laughed. The meat needs to marinate. The salsas need to breathe, Rosa added, surprising them all by remembering. The tortillas need that first kiss of heat. Miguel finished reading from the sign Carlos had posted in the truck years ago. They worked through the morning rush like a well-oiled machine, albeit one with extra parts that didn't quite fit yet. Rosa's precise medical hands struggled with the casual chaos of food truck service. Miguel kept trying to optimize processes that didn't need optimizing. Sophia filmed everything while somehow also taking orders. But it worked. Somehow miraculously it worked. At noon, when the rush finally slowed, Maria's phone rang. Her lawyer, the good one Rosa had insisted on hiring, had news. David's been arrested, he said simply. Victoria Chen sent evidence to the FBI about financial fraud at his restaurant. Apparently, he's been laundering money for some very bad people. Maria sat down hard on the truck's back bumper. Around her life, continued customers ordering her family, cooking, the city churning on as it always did. But for her in this moment, time stopped. David was gone. Not just from her life, but from any position where he could hurt them again. The war was over before the final battle could even be fought. Maria, the lawyer continued, there's more. With David's assets frozen and him likely facing federal charges, you're going to get everything in the divorce. The house, the savings, full custody of Sophia, everything. Maria hung up the phone and looked at her daughter, who was teaching Rosa how to frame a shot for Instagram. Her mother and her daughter together at last bridging their gap with the language of a generation Rosa didn't fully understand, but was trying to learn. What is it, Mama? Sophia asked, seeing her expression. It's over, Maria said. David's going to prison. The truck went silent. Then Carlos started laughing deep belly laughs that shook his whole frame. That pendejo finally got what was coming. But Maria wasn't laughing. She was thinking about Victoria driving north with her secret. about David sitting in a federal holding cell, about the circular nature of revenge, how it came for everyone eventually, even when you didn't seek it yourself. "Mom," Sophia put down her camera. "Are you okay?" Maria stood up, dusting off her apron. "I'm better than okay, mija. I'm free." That night, after the truck was closed and cleaned after Rosa had gone home with promises to return Sunday after Miguel had left to face his father's wrath, Maria and Sophia sat in the empty parking lot, where just 24 hours ago they'd made their stand. "What now?" Sophia asked. Maria looked at her daughter, this fierce, brilliant young woman who'd turned their family crisis into a movement, who'd found her voice in defending something she'd once been embarrassed by. "Now we grow," Maria said. "We take the GoFundMe money and Miguel's investment offer, but on our terms. We keep the truck, but open a small restaurant. We teach classes on traditional cooking. We build something that honors where we came from while moving toward where we're going." "And Dad?" Maria pulled her daughter close. "Your father made his choices. We'll deal with whatever comes from that, but he doesn't get to be part of our story anymore. This is our story now." Sophia was quiet for a moment. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, mija." They sat there as the city lights came on, as Los Angeles transformed from a daytime hustle to a nighttime dream. Somewhere David was learning that actions had consequences. Somewhere Victoria was starting over. Somewhere Rosa was probably planning Sunday's menu. But here in this food truck that had become a symbol of resistance, Maria and Sophia were exactly where they belonged. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be lawyers to meet plans to make a business to expand. But tonight they had this moment of peace after the storm, this breath before the next chapter began. The meat would need to marinate. The salsas would need to breathe. The tortillas would need that first kiss of heat. Some things, no matter what else changed, remained sacred. 3 months later, Maria stood in front of an empty storefront on Melrose Avenue, Keys, heavy in her hand. The windows were dusty, the floors needed work, but the bones were good. More importantly, it was hers, bought with the GoFundMe money, Rosa's investment, and a small business loan that Miguel had co-signed against his father's wishes. "It's perfect," Sophia said, filming the moment for their YouTube channel, which now had 2 million subscribers. Corazón de Mexico, the restaurant. "Not just a restaurant," Maria corrected. "A cocina, a kitchen where people come to learn to eat, to become family." The transformation had been swift after David's arrest. The FBI had frozen his assets, but they'd also uncovered something darker. The money laundering Victoria had mentioned was just the tip. David had been cooking more than food. He'd been cooking books for a criminal organization that trafficked more than just cash. The trial would take years, but David was being held without bail. "You sure you want his name on the lease papers?" Carlos asked, reviewing the documents. With David's conviction looking certain, Maria had been awarded all marital assets, including his prized knife collection, which she'd donated to a culinary school. "Sophia Chen Gonzalez has a nice ring to it," Maria said, signing with her maiden name restored. "Besides, Chen is Sophia's name too. I won't take that from her." Sophia lowered her camera. "I've been thinking about that, actually. I want to change my name, not legally but professionally. Sophia Gonzalez. Just Gonzalez." Maria looked at her daughter, surprised. "You don't have to do that, mija." "I know, but our name means something now. It stands for something. Dad's name. It just reminds me of what he tried to destroy." Before Maria could respond, Rosa arrived with a truck full of kitchen equipment. Not new stuff, vintage pieces she'd been collecting from estate sales and restaurant closures. "That molcajete is from 1892, Rosa announced, directing the movers like a general. "It belonged to a restaurant in Oaxaca that served Frida Kahlo. Be careful with it." The opening was scheduled for 3 weeks away. They'd kept the food truck running while renovating the space, and demand had only grown. The Times wanted to do a feature. Food Network had called about a documentary. But Maria had turned most of it down, choosing instead to focus on what mattered: the food, the family, the community. Miguel had become their unofficial business manager, having been officially disowned by his father for refusing to turn Corazón de Mexico into a franchise opportunity. He'd moved into a studio apartment in Koreatown, trading his Tesla for a used Honda, and seemed happier than Maria had ever seen him. "My father called again. He mentioned helping to install the new old stove. He wants to reconcile, says I'm making a mistake." "What did you tell him?" Maria asked. "I told him I'm finally making something that's mine. Not his money, not his connections, but my choice. He paused. He hung up. He'll come around, Rosa said with the authority of someone who knew about parental stubbornness. Pride is bitter medicine, but eventually even the proudest have to swallow it. 2 weeks before opening, they got an unexpected visitor. Victoria Chen stood outside the food truck at closing time, visibly pregnant, now wearing simple clothes instead of her usual designer outfit. I'm not here to cause trouble, she said quickly, hands protective over her belly. Maria studied her former rival. You look well. Seattle agrees with me. The rain, the coffee, the distance from everything that happened here. Victoria hesitated. I wanted to apologize. Properly. And to thank you. Thank me? For not destroying me when you could have. The recordings I gave you could have released them, ruined what was left of my career. But you didn't. Maria had thought about it, especially in those first angry days after learning about the affair. But Rosa had said something that stuck. Destroying her won't rebuild your life. Only you can do that. I had bigger things to focus on, Maria said simply. Victoria pulled out an envelope. I wanted to give you this. It's not an apology or an attempt to buy forgiveness. It's just something I needed to do. Inside was a check for $20,000 and a letter. Maria read it while Victoria stood nervously by. I've been writing reviews for 10 years, the letter began. I've praised elaborate constructions and molecular gastronomy. I've celebrated chefs who turned food into art. But I never understood until now that the most profound cuisine isn't about innovation or technique. It's about memory, community, and love. Corazón de México serves all three in abundance. This isn't a review. I don't have that right anymore. This is testimony from someone who learned too late what really matters. Use this money to preserve what you've built. The world needs more places where food means family. Maria folded the letter carefully. The baby, how are you managing? Day by day. I'm writing a cookbook, actually. Cooking for 1+1. It's about single motherhood and finding yourself in the kitchen. Victoria almost smiled. Your story inspired it. The way you rebuilt everything from your food truck up. Would you like to come in, have something to eat? Victoria shook her head. I can't. That's not my place anymore if it ever was. But maybe someday when this is all distant history, when my child asks about strong women, I'll tell them about Maria Gonzalez, who fed a community while her world burned down and then built it back up one taco at a time. She walked away before Maria could respond, disappearing into the Los Angeles twilight like a ghost of crisis past. Opening night arrived with the kind of perfect weather that made people forgive Los Angeles for its traffic and sprawl. 72 degrees, clear skies, the mountains visible in the distance like a painted backdrop. The restaurant, Maria refused to call it anything but the Cocina, was packed. They'd only advertised on social media, but the line stretched around the block. Sophia live-streamed everything, narrating the story of each dish, the history embedded in every recipe. The menu was simple, 7 items each representing a different generation of Gonzalez women. Each dish came with a small card telling its story, written by Rosa in her precise psychiatrist's handwriting. The mole negro, of course, the recipe that had sustained them through everything. Enchiladas verdes that Maria's grandmother had made to celebrate surviving the revolution. Tamales that Rosa had learned from her mother-in-law, a peace offering that had bridged their differences. Tacos al pastor that Maria had perfected in the food truck adapted for the streets of Los Angeles. Elote that Sophia had learned to make, adding her own twist with Korean chili flakes from Mrs. Park. Churros that Carlos had taught them from his mother's recipe. And Pozole Miguel's contribution learned from his grandmother before his family had traded authenticity for ambition. Each dish is a story, Maria told the packed room during her brief speech. Each recipe is a rebellion against forgetting. When my grandmother taught my mother to cook, she wasn't just teaching her to feed people. She was teaching her to remember who we are, where we come from, what we've survived. In the crowd, Maria spotted unexpected faces. Inspector Morrison, who'd tried to shut them down, eating tamales with guilty pleasure. Several of David's former sous chefs who'd quit when they learned about his crimes. Even James Rivera Miguel's father, sitting alone at a corner table watching his son work with something that might have been pride or regret. But it was the familiar faces that mattered most. Mrs. Park had brought her entire family. Tommy, the security guard, was there with his new girlfriend, proudly translating the menu into Spanish for her. The food truck community had come in force, treating the opening like a family celebration. Halfway through the evening, Rosa clinked a glass. I want to make a toast, she announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to being heard. To mistakes corrected, to time recovered, to my daughter who built something I was too afraid to build, to my granddaughter who showed us all that our stories matter, and to this cocina, which is more than a restaurant, it's a testament to the power of women who refuse to be broken. The crowd erupted in applause, but Maria was watching Sophia, who was crying while trying to keep her camera steady. This tough, brilliant girl who'd turned their family disaster into triumph was still just 15, still just a child who'd watched her world explode and had chosen to document the rebuilding rather than hide from the destruction. Your turn, Maria whispered to her daughter. Tell them our story. Sophia handed her camera to Miguel and stood on a chair, suddenly looking very young despite her poise. 6 months ago, my dad tried to destroy this, she began, her voice stronger with each word. He thought our food truck was embarrassing. He thought our traditions were worthless. He thought we were worthless. But he was wrong. Every view, every like, every share, that was you all saying he was wrong. Every person who stood with us when the health inspector came, every dollar donated to keep us going every night, someone showed up to protect us. That was you proving that what we do matters. She paused, looking directly at her mother. My mom taught me that food is love. My abuela taught me that tradition is strength. Carlos taught me that loyalty is everything. Miguel taught me that choosing authenticity over easy money is real wealth. And all of you taught me that community is family you choose. The room was silent, everyone hanging on her words. So this isn't just a restaurant opening. It's a promise. We promise to keep cooking the recipes that tell our story. We promise to keep our doors open to anyone who needs to feel like family. We promise to remember that every meal is a chance to create memory, to build community, to resist forgetting. Welcome to Corazón de Mexico. Welcome home. The applause was deafening. Maria pulled her daughter into a fierce hug, feeling Rosa's arms wrap around them both, feeling Carlos and Miguel join the embrace. This strange, chosen, fought-for family that had emerged from the ashes of betrayal. Later, after the crowd had thinned and only the inner circle remained, they sat around a table laden with leftovers, tired but glowing with success. Miguel's phone buzzed with notifications. The live stream had been viewed 1,000,000 times. Orders for catering were pouring in. 3 publishers wanted Sophia to write a cookbook. We're going to need that second truck after all, Carlos said, scrolling through the requests. And more help, Rosa added. I know some women refugees from various countries, all incredible cooks who need work. A cooking school, Sophia suggested. Teaching kids to document their family recipes before they're lost. Maria listened to them plan, build, dream. 6 months ago, she'd been a woman with a food truck and a failing marriage. Now she was the center of something bigger than she'd ever imagined. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, then saw the preview. It's Victoria. My daughter was born today. I named her Maria. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like. Maria didn't share the message. Some things were meant to be private, even in an age where everything was content. Instead, she stood and walked to the wall where they'd hung family photos, her grandmother, her mother herself, Sophia. 4 generations of Gonzalez women who'd survived revolution, immigration, silence, and betrayal. Mama, Sophia called. You okay? Maria turned back to her family by blood and by choice. I'm perfect, mija. Now who wants to help me prep for tomorrow? The meat needs to marinate. The salsas need to breathe, everyone chorused. The tortillas need that first kiss of heat. They worked until dawn, teaching, learning, laughing, creating. The city outside was settling into sleep, but inside Corazón de Mexico, life was just beginning. 3 years passed. The cocina had become an institution featured in travel guides and food shows, but still maintaining its neighborhood feel. They'd opened 2 more food trucks, employed 15 people, and started a nonprofit teaching cooking and food entrepreneurship to immigrant women. Sophia had deferred college to write her cookbook, 3 Generations of Family Recipe for Resistance, which had become a bestseller. She was 18 now, poised and confident, splitting her time between running the restaurant's social media empire and studying film at USC. Miguel had married Carmen, one of the refugee women Rosa had brought to work at the cocina. His father had finally come around, even investing in their nonprofit, though Miguel insisted on keeping business and family separate. Rosa had retired from her psychiatry practice to manage the cooking school full-time. She'd become a YouTube sensation herself, Abuela's Psychology Kitchen, where she taught cooking while dispensing mental health advice. Carlos had opened his own food truck with Maria's blessing and backing, specializing in fusion tacos that would have horrified purists, but delighted anyone who tasted them. And Maria, she stood in the kitchen of their third location, this one in Boyle Heights, teaching a class of young women how to make mole negro, the recipe that had been passed down through revolution and immigration, through silence and reconciliation, through destruction and rebuilding. The secret, she told them, grinding chilies in the ancient molcajete, is not in the ingredients, it's in the intention. You have to cook with memory, with purpose, with love. You have to remember that every dish is a story, and every story is a form of resistance. One of the students raised her hand. Resistance against what? Maria smiled, thinking of David, who was serving 15 years in federal prison. Of Victoria, who'd sent photos of little Maria taking her first steps. Of her mother teaching in the next room. Of Sophia filming everything for posterity. Against forgetting who we are, Maria answered. Against letting anyone else define our worth. Against the idea that tradition is less valuable than innovation. Against anyone who tries to make us small. She looked at each young woman in the class, seeing in them the future of this story that had no real ending, only new chapters. Now, she said, let me teach you what my grandmother taught my mother, what my mother taught me, what I taught my daughter. Let me teach you how to feed people in a way that makes them family. The students leaned in, eager, ready. And Maria began, as she always did, with the fundamentals. First, the meat needs to marinate. The salsas need to breathe. The tortillas need that first kiss of heat. Outside, Los Angeles churned on dreams and schemes, triumph and disaster, the endless dance of ambition and survival. But inside this kitchen, time moved differently. Here, the past and present stirred together like ingredients in a pot, creating something that would nourish long after the meal was done. The food truck that had started it all still operated, now driven by Maria's newest employee, a young woman fleeing an abusive relationship, starting over with nothing but determination. Maria had given her the keys that morning, saying simply, your turn to build something. Because that's what they did at Corazon de Mexico. They took the broken and made them whole. They took tradition and made it contemporary. They took a food truck and made it a movement. And every morning without fail at 3:45 a.m., someone was up preparing. Because the meat needed to marinate. The salsas needed to breathe. The tortillas needed that first kiss of heat. Some things, no matter how much else changed, remained sacred. The revolution wasn't in the food. It was in the feeding. It was in the refusal to let anyone else tell their story. It was in 3 generations of women standing in a kitchen teaching the 4th generation that recipes are really spells and incantations against erasure formulas for remembering instructions for survival. Maria looked at her students, these young women with their own stories of struggle and survival, and saw the future stretching out like an endless tortilla, ready to be filled with whatever they chose to put inside. Now, she said, let's cook. And they did. They cooked like their lives depended on it. Because in a way they did. They cooked like their stories mattered. Because they did. They cooked like the act of feeding someone was sacred. Because it was. In the end, that's all the revolution was. Women in a kitchen refusing to forget, refusing to be forgotten, refusing to let anyone else write their recipes or their stories. The food truck revolution hadn't ended. It had just begun. 5 years later, the James Beard Award notification came on a Tuesday morning while Maria was teaching her regular 6 a.m. class. Sophia, now 23 and fresh from film school, was the one who saw it first. Mom, she said, bursting into the kitchen with her phone. Mom, you need to see this. Maria read the email 3 times before it sank in. Corazon de Mexico had been nominated for Outstanding Hospitality, not just for the food, but for what they'd built: the community, the cooking school, the nonprofit that had helped launch 37 food businesses. We did it, Sophia whispered, then louder, we did it. The kitchen erupted in celebration. Rosa popped champagne at 6:15 a.m. Carlos, who'd driven over the moment he heard, lifted Maria in a bear hug that left her breathless. Miguel called from New York, where he was negotiating a cookbook deal for their students. But Maria's eyes were on the wall of photos, her grandmother who'd never lived to see America, but whose recipes had conquered it. Her mother, who'd thought this life was beneath them, but had learned it was actually above anything she'd dreamed. Her daughter, who'd turned a family crisis into a triumph. And herself, the woman who'd stood in a food truck at 4 a.m. and chosen to fight rather than fold. Abuela would be proud, Rosa said, putting her arm around Maria. She is proud, Maria corrected. Every time we cook her recipes, she's here. That night, they held an impromptu celebration at the original location. The whole community came Mrs. Park, now 90 and still ordering the same breakfast burrito. Tommy, retired but still practicing his Spanish. Jennifer, who'd finally accepted that gluten was delicious. Even unexpected guests arrived. Victoria sent a congratulations video from Seattle, her daughter Maria visible in the background, playing with pots and pans. David's parents, who'd maintained a relationship with Sophia despite everything, came with flowers and tears. And in a moment that felt like cosmic justice, Inspector Morrison arrived with a proclamation from the city declaring the day Corazón de México Day in Los Angeles. As the party wound down, Maria found herself alone in the kitchen for a moment, the same kitchen where she'd taught hundreds of women to cook, where she'd rebuilt her life one meal at a time, where she'd learned that sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It's success that lifts others as it rises. Sophia found her there, camera in hand as always. One more for the documentary. Maria nodded. The documentary, Sophia's thesis project, that had become a feature film premiering at Sundance next month. The story of their story, told by the one who'd been documenting it from the beginning. What would you tell that woman? Sophia asked, the one standing in the food truck 5 years ago, watching her marriage fall apart. Maria thought for a long moment. I'd tell her that the mole is going to burn if she doesn't stir it. I'd tell her that the salsas need more lime. I'd tell her that the tortillas are perfect, just like they've always been. That's it. No, Maria smiled. I'd also tell her that everything that's about to break had to break, that everything that's about to hurt had to hurt, because on the other side of that, breaking and hurting, is this a life she built herself a family, she chose herself a legacy that no one can take away. Sophia lowered the camera. I love you, Mom. I love you too, mija. They stood together in the kitchen, surrounded by the ghosts of all the meals that had been cooked there, all the stories that had been told, all the women who'd learned that feeding people was a form of revolution. Somewhere in Los Angeles, a young woman was standing in a food truck, her world falling apart, wondering how she'd survive. Somewhere a grandmother was teaching her granddaughter a recipe that had survived centuries. Somewhere someone was taking their first bite of food that tasted like home, even if home was a place they'd never been. And in this kitchen, Maria Gonzalez stood with her daughter, knowing that they'd done more than survive. They'd thrived. They'd built something that would outlast them all. The meat had marinated. The salsas had breathed. The tortillas had received their first kiss of heat. And the revolution, served one plate at a time, continued.